Oh, and don't forget to get us a melee weapon too, though. Sorry. Hi, we're with the Blizzard Watch podcast. If you were listening to the pre-show, you understand why I just did that. And if not, once again, you're confused and you want to join our Patreon and get to listen to the pre-show, because the pre-show is amazing. We're just so good. You guys have no idea how great we are in the pre-show. I am going to say this because you don't listen to it. You don't know. I could be real funny on that thing. But yeah, it's Blizzard Watch podcast. We're going to talk about Blizzard Entertainment, its mini games, and also other things if they come up. But this week was actually a really busy week for Blizzard. A lot of stuff happened. I don't know that we're going to talk about anything else. So keep that in mind. I might talk about how World of Warcraft helped spawn the creation of a cryptocurrency that was just used in a $600 million heist.
And I read the article, and it is exactly what I thought was going to happen, which doesn't make me feel much better.
But yes, it's myself, Matt, Liz, and Joe. We're here to give you a podcast, and we're going to do that. Also, sometimes we run D&D games, and in those D&D games, DMs are crazy and give their players decks of many things.
Oh, yeah, Liz is already planning on her next character because we know what's going to happen with me around.
I have my next character all set up. It's great.
Yep. I'm actually currently working on a tarot deck for when you guys do the drawing of cards. But we should talk about actual Blizzard things. So we're going to move on to their top stories. Once again, I go weirdly prospectory at that moment. I don't know why. But first up, this is just going to be a brief mention. We're not going to do any spoilers for it or anything, but the Sylvanas book is out. It went launch today as we're recording this, the Tuesday, the 29th.
My copy actually just arrived today.
Joe and Liz did a bunch of questions, and I threw in like 2 or 3.
Actually, let me correct you. Joe did a bunch of questions. I just consolidated everything.
Yeah, I may have gone overboard. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I just only asked 2 or 3. I know that the ones I asked were answered. I remembered them, but I only answered 2. I only asked 2 or 3. So Joe did most of the work. But regardless, the interview is up on our site right now, and you can go take a look at it and get some insight into Christie's process and stuff she does other than write really cool books that we like, and how she worked on the Sylvanas book, which is a departure. I will say that much. Having read it once, I feel like I need to read it again because she really went for a different style here. This is almost like an epistolatory novel. It's really interesting. Extremely unreliable narrator. I will say that much. Because the book is narrated by Sylvanas. And if you get the audiobook, the book is literally narrated by Sylvanas because Patty Mattson is doing the audiobook. And I got to say...
Patty Mattson is so great. So if you like audiobooks, do that.
She does an amazing job on this. I'm going to say this. Even when I have not liked Sylvanas as a character, I've always liked Patty Mattson's performance. And she really started stepping it up in Legion. And she's been doing an amazing job with the character ever since. So yeah, very much it's worth getting. It's absolutely worth getting the audiobook just to hear it read. But in addition to that, we're not going to, again, we're avoiding spoilers. This is not the lore show. We used to talk a lot about lore. We've dialed that back because we have a whole show for lore. But we will mention that there's a cinematic out that reveals, essentially it's the epilogue to the raid. It's like after the jailer's beaten, what happens to Sylvanas. We're not going to talk about what happens to Sylvanas because, again, we've got a lore show for that. But we do want people to know it's out there. Maybe be careful. Don't click on any strange cinematics, if you don't want to be spoiled. It does. I'm going to say this much. I feel like Joe said it best when he said, wait, that's the thing we thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
We
before the data mining, folks. Before the data mining.
This was months ago. Back in the middle of 2021, we both speculated something along those lines. So I don't feel like it is out of left field or an unusual thing to have happened. I feel like it was one of the 3 main ways it could have gone.
Yeah, agreed.
But that's it. We're gonna stop talking about it now because we don't want to spoil it. Lore Watch is coming up this week. It'll be Sunday. Obviously, this is a possibility for a conversation.
Yeah, I think
if you guys want to say email us or talk to us on Discord, you can tell us if that's something you're interested in. Joe, you were saying?
I was going to say, unless we get a really big backlash of people not wanting us to do an episode of Lore Watch on it, I feel like we're going to be talking about it with heavy spoiler warnings for folks that haven't seen it yet to try to give you a little bit of time.
Yeah. I mean, we might talk about the book too, but it depends on...
Probably both of the things.
Yeah.
I think they intersect, so...
Yeah, they do. But now we're going to move on to something that isn't spoilery or lore heavy. Unless you feel like the race to world first is something you can be spoiled on. I don't know what to tell you on that. But we have a winner. The jailer has died. He has been killed on Mythic, and it was Echo that beat him. So Echo got world first. I believe Method got world second. And aren't both Echo and Method basically the old Method split into two raids?
Yes, Echo broke off from Method, and Method kind of rebuilt from the ashes, and so yeah.
So two Methods both killed the jailer, and Liquid, who were like right up there, they were in the hunt all the way through the raid, just stopped. They just straight up stopped. Did they even do? How many did they do? A lot of jailer attempts.
Oh yeah, they got him down to like 18%, but they were, this raid lasted. It was going into 3 weeks, and
don't people like take time off work to do this?
Yeah, but this was 3 weeks, and they were playing Warcraft for like 16 hours a day, every day for 3 weeks, and they hit this point and they were done. And their raid leader said, okay, we aren't going to get this. We're going to stop. We're going to go home, and we'll get back to it next week.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a pretty reasonable thing for him to have done, quite frankly.
I was watching his stream at the time, and he was sitting there talking to people on Twitch, and you had the rest of the raiders in the background, and this isn't an exact quote, but I recall him saying, "See, that's how I know we did the right thing. They're all back there, they're talking, they're laughing, they're talking about what they're going to do tonight, and that's how I know we did the right thing." So, it's interesting to think about the human cost about these races. And I really enjoy watching them. I think they're really interesting. They're really exciting. I love watching people play at the top of their game. But yeah, when a race goes on like this and you're sitting at your computer for all of these hours every day, focusing, and that's hard on a person. Gosh, Joe, us, we raid 3 hours a night, twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And the last hour of the raid, we are all loopy and doing a terrible job usually.
We call it chicken time.
I think that happens to almost every raid guild, because I remember the last 2 guilds I was in, absolutely, the last hour is basically just either it's farm mode, and so you can mess around and it doesn't matter, or you are bashing your head into the wall because you just can't focus anymore.
It's especially pronounced now, I think, too, that one of the things that I don't think can be overstated is we're older now. Back 20 years ago, go ahead and cry out there, folks. It's been that long. When we were doing this stuff, we were younger and maybe had less responsibilities or worked different jobs or had different schedules and were capable of having sort of that late night focus more than we do now. I mean, a lot of this is me speaking personally, but I know for a lot of the people in our guild, it's like this because we're all from that same period of time. And you get to a certain point and your body is just like, I am done focusing right now. I have been working since 8 o'clock this morning, focusing on things. And raiding is focusing on something as much as you would anything else you're working on, which is why we try to joke and keep it light and stuff like that. But even then, we end raid at, midnight for me on the East Coast. And at my old job, when I was working a steady 9 to 5, that was hell. Liz will tell you how many times there were a couple times I fell asleep on my keyboard at raid break. But we just don't have that long-term focus anymore, just because of, again, times and things have shifted. And I think that's true of everyone. It's everything is different now, even if it's your full-time job to raid, which a lot of these world guilds are still doing that. It's still a lot to ask of somebody.
Another thing about Liquid was that towards the end, they lost their main tank because I don't know what happened, but he had to leave. He had to leave and was not raiding with them anymore. That was the Death Knight that actually soloed the last bit of Anduin for them. They had gotten Anduin to 4% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was dead except the 2 tanks, a Mistweaver and a Death Knight. And the Mistweaver went down. It was just this Death Knight who got like the last % or 2 on Anduin with an entire raid dead. That was astounding to watch. And that's got to be a huge morale hit when your main tank is like, has to leave because of real life stuff. And then you're going to a backup tank, and it just wasn't working out. They knew they weren't going to win. So it's a good idea. You got to take care of your mental and physical health.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot to be said for that. It's a good attitude to go into it with. But again, that's the current situation. As far as I know, Echo and Method are the only ones to have killed him on Mythic, and everybody else is still working on it.
Yep.
But we're going to move on to talk a little bit about Diablo Immortal, because quite a few things have happened there. We have the tentative, I know the pre-ordering is happening right now.
Pre-registration is happening now.
Has they actually come out and said when this is coming out?
No, but
I see June 30th is the tentative release date. But
yeah, it's on the if you go into the iOS store and you register to pre-order, or it's a free to play.
So you're pre-registering.
And you'll download it when it comes out, basically. So that says June 30th, but it has some wording around it that says maybe June 30th, like they're trying for June 30th.
So interesting thing about that, when they do a pre-registration in the iOS store or the Android store, you have to be targeting within a 6-month release. So sorry, I just figured I would throw that out there as we're talking about it.
From
it has
now,
to be within the next 6 months.
June is 3 months away, so they can go all the way to September. Yeah, so that's worth knowing. But in addition to that, one of the things I thought was really interesting was they had talked about this before, but they finally released a post. We have a post on it on our site talking about it. They've essentially put in something akin to Final Fantasy's job system, where you could be playing a barbarian, decide, you know what, I hate barbarians. And then, of course, lightning would hit you. But you could do it, and you could decide to go back and switch your character over to a monk, or a demon hunter, or a necromancer, whatever. You can just do that, and you'll keep all your old gear in case you ever decide you want to go back to the previous class. The brain parasites have been removed, and now you want to play a barbarian again because they're the best class. You can go do that. You can switch back and take out all your old gear and go back to barbarianing, like that unfortunate incident never happened. Or you can, say you're playing a necromancer and you want to see what the deal is with a wizard. You can do that. That's kind of amazing. Like I mentioned, Final Fantasy's got something like that, has had something like that for a long time. Even the single-player games had it, and the MMO has it. But not a lot of others do, really. WoW certainly doesn't. The other MMO that Blizzard works on. By the way, again, Diablo Immortal is an MMO.
Yep.
It's a mobile game, yes, but it is a mobile game that is a multiplayer online role-playing game. That's what this is. I think they're calling it an MMO ARPG.
Yeah, MMORPG, which is the same thing like Lost Ark is, and it's a very common genre thing in I hate to say it like this, but Far Eastern countries, right? Like Far Eastern countries tends to be a bread and butter MMO type setup for them.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what Diablo Immortal is going to be. So that's interesting to me. I quite frankly, I believe it was either Liz Pat or Anna who wrote the post about this, and I don't remember which one it was, so I'm going to go look it up. But either way, it's definitely Liz Pat, second Liz. She made the point that this should be something other games do, and I wholeheartedly agree. I have gotten to the point where, and keep in mind, I'm saying this as the guy who plays 35 warriors out of the 50 possible that I could have back when they had the character limit.
I laugh in 36 shaman.
Yeah. I play a lot of warriors. I don't really play that many other classes. I've got a paladin. No, I've got 2 paladins technically. I've got a death knight, 2 paladins, and a shaman, and then a hunter that I keep tinkering with. And then seriously, the rest of my characters are warriors. So probably closer to 40 something. But regardless, I think it's a good idea to maybe it's not necessary that you should have to start over and level a character all the way back up to max level to switch classes. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's time to just accept that the new way of doing things is to have one character that can switch to anything else whenever it wants to.
Yes, the new way of doing things. That is the old way of doing things. That used to be from Final Fantasy Tactics. I've been saying this for freaking years.
Yeah, but MMOs up to this point haven't done it, but
I know.
now we've got the Final Fantasy one that does, and yeah, I think that this is probably the way they should go. It
just makes more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Liz, what do you think?
Yes, I think you're right, but I want to kind of take a tangent here and say something that Ian Hazzikostas talked about quite a few months ago in an interview. Was about respecting players' time. And
back in like April of 2021 before. Yeah, okay, I remember that. Yeah. Wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. But respecting players' time, and I feel like WoW has like patch 9.2, I feel like has kind of veered in that direction. One of the things I think is really interesting about Zereth Mortis is that there are only a few things to do.
Yeah,
it's not a zone you can spend all day in. Like Korthia or Mechagon were just so busy. There were tons of quests. You had 5 or 6 daily quests every day. Korthia has 2 weekly quests to do, and there are rares spawning in Korthia non-stop. Korthia and Mechagon were both packed with mobs, completely packed with mobs that you had to run through and find your way through to get to where you were going. And it took a lot of time. You could spend hours there every day and not do everything there was to do. Mm-hmm. Even if you only went to do a couple of things, it might take you an hour because of the time it took to get around and just the time it took to find things. But in Zereth Mortis, there are 3 daily quests every day. There's 1 weekly quest. There is a road around the zone that you can mostly traverse safely. You can fly in Zereth Mortis without a huge amount of hassle. It was time gated, but it does not take a lot of work. And some people have pointed out that there are birds in Zereth Mortis that will attack you, but they aren't as fearsome as who was it? There was someone flying around Mechagon who would just one-shot you.
Yup.
So that was always ugly. Though I do admit, as a paladin, I have gotten hit by things in the air sometimes, and I divine shield on my way down. So I do feel for you who are not paladins. But
now that we also have the mount gear now too, which we didn't have before. So like you don't die from falling anymore. Period.
Not necessarily, but it feels like, and I've heard some people. I answered a question about this in the queue a few weeks ago, where people are like, "But there's not much to do in Zereth Mortis. Why isn't there more to do in Zereth Mortis?" And it's like, I think it's intentional. Because what we want is less. Mm-hmm. We want to have to spend less time in the game because we are all busy adults. We have families, we have responsibilities, we have jobs. We get tired.
This is actually something that now causes me to go on a tangent. So
yeah.
I was just thinking about it in terms of like, this is why I loved the end of Battle for Azeroth.
Uh-huh.
Because I could gear up these alts that I was playing, the Death Knight, the 2 Paladins. I could gear them up much quicker. And it didn't have to spend days on it. I could get them geared up much faster and felt like I was getting things done. Just spend a couple hours on, and my Paladin is now comparable. Not as good as my raiding character, but good enough. Good enough that I could heal some 5-mans. Good enough that I could go to a Mythic Plus and actually contribute as a healer. And I like that. I like feeling like, catch-up mechanisms and just ease of play, so it doesn't take all, I don't have to spend a month grinding to get stuff that I can get, do it a couple hours a night and get there.
That's the thing that I like the most, and I really want to give them credit for. And this is a conversation that I know Liz and I recently had with our guildmates, is I have decided I'm not going to DPS on my shaman anymore when I need to not heal. Instead, I've been gearing up my hunter so that when I need to make that switch, I can just bring the hunter in, because I'm finding DPS on my hunter more fun than DPS on my shaman. And I know Padilla in chat is going to give me some guff for this later. But it's just something that I find a little more engaging with the current tool set and the current setup. And I feel like if I do that, I'm not going to be a weight on the raid like I was in Castle Denathrius, right? So they've definitely shifted that and put that mindset in where they are respecting that time. And I appreciate that. I really do.
And I think it would be nice if you could actually like say, oh, we're going DPS. Imagine if you could just, pop back to Orbos, go to the respecker and respec to Hunter. And have all your Hunter gear that you've been gathering, and
Yeah, I feel this is all part of the same conversation. The class switching, how sometimes there's less to do. Sometimes there are easier ways to catch up. Like in Zereth Mortis, you can just buy 226 gear, bind on account, then you can send your ults. It does cost Anna, but Anna drops like candy right now, so it's not a big investment. Even if you're gearing an ult up from nothing, there's also a token you can buy, and used to increase your ult to around level 40. Now it increases them to 60, and it's like this is great. It is so much easier to get started. We don't have to spend hours grinding. We can just get in there and play, and we aren't. If you don't play a lot, you may be a little behind, your fellow gamers who play all the time, but you can play just a little and still be in the ballpark, and that's great. If we in WoW could switch classes, that's another thing where we don't have to worry about spending, 60 hours, however long it's going to take us to level from 0 to 60. We can just play the game, and playing the game is what's fun. That's what we want to do.
And not just playing the game, but like also playing the game with our friends. Like it's lowering the barrier to get back to playing the game with our friends.
And combining that with the thing they're adding where we'll finally have cross-faction play.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some stuff that's coming in has actually been pretty amazing. But I do think at this point we've moved very far away from the Diablo Immortal discussion. So
that's what people are here for, let's be honest.
Yeah, I will wrap this up and say, class change in Diablo Immortal, that's pretty cool. But now, speaking of Blizzard games getting something that other games have had, Overwatch 2 is finally getting that ping system. They did a big post this week outlining how the ping system is going to work. And it's really interesting. If you've played Apex Legends, which I actually have, because I loved Titanfall and Titanfall 2, so when Respawn came out with a game, I gave it a shot. I have the same problems playing Apex Legends that I did playing Titanfall 2 in PvP mode. Something about the motion on the screen gets me sick real fast. Mm-hmm. It's the same problem I actually have playing Overwatch.
They do a weird motion blur. It's hard.
I don't know what's going on with it, but whatever. But the point being, this is a system that Apex Legends has had since it came out in 2019. But it is actually, I think, more advanced. I think Blizzard has actually improved it. You can basically ping an area on the ground. You can ping a target. You can target someone and ping them. And and everyone will not be told where they are. If they use an ability that moves them rapidly or breaks line of sight or makes them invisible, the ping will stay where they were when they activated it. So you could still go in that direction and try and catch them, but they'll get use out of their, I think the one that they talked about was, oh, bloody heck, I can't remember. I think it was Sombra. It was Sombra's teleport ability they talked about in terms of how this would work, or Reaper. Reaper has several ways to kind of, get out of line of sight. That kind of stuff will still, it'll have some effect because you'll know in the general area of where they are, and you won't have to say anything into your headphone. There's no voice communication necessary.
That's something I wish more games did. Like, as much gruff and stuff that League of Legends has earned ill over the years, their ping system is one of the best nonverbal communication systems that has been available in a game in a long time. And then, like you pointed out with Apex Legends, it's incredibly useful. And now adding it to Overwatch 2, that's even better, because I can tell you damn well I don't want to get on comms with random people, even if I'm playing Overwatch. Like, I don't want that. And I know people that have had terrible experiences with being forced to be on in-game voice chat. And what happens when I can just get a ping instead? I'll take the ping instead.
Well, and it's just, this has to be faster than communicating. Oh, hey, I saw Sombra and she's right here at this corner, over here. And, that's going to get jumbled and confusing.
Plus, it tells you where they are. You don't have to be trying to describe, well, I'm over here by the so-and-so. No, boom, the ping tells you this is where they are. And the one thing I really liked is that they've said, I believe it was Gavin Winter, who's one of the designers on it, specifically said this is being designed to help them cut back toxicity.
which is good.
Yeah, which is great. But think about it. They're basically finally admitting, you know what? Letting people just talk to each other over voice chat wasn't really helping us curb toxicity, because they'd be doing it like through their own means, and it's not like there's something we can talk to about in the game. But now you won't need it. If you don't need to voice chat to play, if they want to harass you, they have to do it in game, and they can be more easily punished for it. There's this idea is one of the first time I've seen them do a step where I'm actually saying, yeah, this could actually work. It's not going to get rid of harassment. I mean, I've played enough Hearthstone to know people can harass you with just emotes, so I'm sure people could abuse the ping system too.
Somebody will find a way, but also at the end of the day, if I can mute pings, problem solved.
Yeah, and you can.
Yeah, you can mute specific people and then they can't ping you.
Exactly. So, there you go.
It is a remarkably, like, I don't know how to put this. It feels like a really nice forward-facing change. So instead of trying to like keep Overwatch the same way it's always been, it's admitting other games have done cool things since Overwatch came out, and we're going to look at them and learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty great. I think that's, either of you have anything else to say before we move on?
No, y'all got it.
Okay. This next one is based in part on a tweet that Steve Denuser just did that I just saw, and part on stuff I already knew. So I'm just going to roll this one out. We now have, I'm not going to say what it is, but Anduin makes a decision after the raid. There's a new Blood Elf quest coming in 9.2.5, a quest chain that has an additional extra thing for Blood Elf Paladins. And also, the characters of Anduin, Gen Greymane, and Sylvanas, they have different gossip for Alliance and Horde players. If you're like playing as a Tauren versus playing as an elf, they have different lines. No, gnomes just get screamed at. No. Sylvanas, actually had gnomes murdered, so I'm pretty sure she didn't like gnomes. But in addition to that, which is pretty cool in and of itself, Sylvanas has specifically unique gossip for people who played Battle for Azeroth as loyalists.
And by gossip, we mean like you go up to them and you talk to the NPC, and there are actual like text that or a thing that a voice thing that will play out.
Yeah, either the thing where they stand and talk to each other and you can overhear it, or the thing where you can go up to them and talk to them and it will initiate a dialogue. That's gossip. That's what they mean. And they have specific lines based on if you played as a loyalist, you'll get different lines. If you are a horde, you'll get different lines than an alliance will.
Mm-hmm.
I want more of this in everything. I want this everywhere. I want constantly them to do this from now on. Super excited about this.
Yeah, as a Vulpera Leowild, yeah, that I feel that in my bones. Anyway, it's good. It's interesting. I like when they do that, and we liked when they did it during BFA when we had the different things that you could get for quest reactions and stuff like that. It's good to see that it's carrying forward, and it's good to see that we talk about ripples, right? We talk about how sometimes it's hard to carry those ripples forward in an MMO, but this is another thing where they're making a concerted effort to continue to do so, and I'm here for it.
Yep. And also, Liz, the current theory is that Blood Elf quest, the Paladin one, will get you a special Paladin transmog.
Yeah, I saw pictures of some armor, and I'm looking forward to its special Blood Elf things, or that's my thing. I'm a Blood Elf Paladin since Burning Crusade, so yeah, I know Blood Elf Paladins are kind of horrible, or at least we started out.
They got better.
Horrible. Yeah,
nowadays Liadrin's pretty cool. And one thing about the quest I will mention, do you remember the Children's Week little Blood Elf orphan type, Salandria?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's all grown up. She's a Paladin aspirant, and she's a big part of this quest.
That's actually really cool. That's awesome.
I've heard nothing about the little Draenei girl, and that annoys me a little bit, but we do know that Salandria will be coming back in this quest line.
She'll be leading our charge back to Argus. It'll be fine.
But anyway,
the little girl grew up and became a paladin.
Yep.
I'm so happy.
But also, one last thing before we move, because Liz mentioned Burning Crusade. Burning Crusade Classic is now in Phase 4. It went live last week. So Zulaman is now raidable in Burning Crusade Classic. That's
Woo!
it. That's the tweet. It's not a tweet, but if it were.
Yeah.
But at this point, I am going to say we're going to move on because we've got some questions and stuff to talk about. Go ahead.
I do have one thing actually a couple of things out of the rest news that may be worth mentioning. Like one, the Mage Tower. Today, the Mage Tower.
Mage Tower went live today, yes.
Is
and that's
permanent.
permanent now.
You can do Mage Tower all the time, and it's terrible
My girl
and I hate
wants
it, but it's
to
available.
Mage Tower all the time. Sorry.
No one wants to Mage Tower all the time. It's awful and I hate it, but it's there. And I feel like I need to do it. I feel like I want to do it, but also I hate it, but it's there 24/7. So you can go and do it whenever you feel some self-loathing and you want to die a lot. At least that's my experience. I don't know about the rest of you.
I dread going in there as a healer. I'm not gonna lie. It was not fun on Rusto Shaman. And I
hate the healing quest. I've done it so many times and I hate it.
But I'm curious how I can try to do it now with the new tools that I have, because it was definitely heavy around the artifact.
Yeah, but you don't have new tools. Your legendary does not work. None of your legendary abilities work, and you can't outgear it anymore because it scales you down.
Do Covenant abilities work?
No. I hope you don't like that Covenant ability because it is not there.
Because it's effing gone. Yeah.
It's just really challenging. I mean, I don't know if it's more challenging than it was, but it's really hard without either our artifact stuff or our new stuff. It feels like they're cutting you off at the knees here. But if you want to do that, it is there all the time for your enjoyment or self-loathing. Either or.
But regardless,
sometimes both.
We should mention the Diablo 3, sorry. Season 25 is ending this Friday?
Next Friday.
Next Friday. So April 10th?
April 10th.
What even is time? I don't know.
Yeah. Then, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. And then season 26 is starting 5 days after because it ends on a Sunday and then it starts on a Friday. That's how it's been. So it'll either be the 15th or it'll be the 12 days after the close, so the 22nd.
Yeah,
those are the 2 days it will be.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's happening. Season 26 looks like it's really going to be interesting. So they're adding in a whole new play mode. I think it's the Endless Nightmare or something.
Echoing Nightmare.
Echoing Nightmare.
Echoing
Thank
Nightmares.
You. Yeah, the Echoing Nightmares or Nightmare. But it's like basically like a different kind of rift where you just keep going until you die, and the further you get, the better your ultimate rewards for it are. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I'm looking forward to possibly getting to play around with it. But yeah, anything else you think?
One thing, the Shadowlands Season 4. I was browsing the news before the podcast. I don't know if y'all know, but Matt always does an email of news for us to talk about. And I was kind of looking through to see if there was anything we missed. And I was like, I have a pile of things that feel like they happened about a year ago that actually happened last week.
Yeah.
And one of those was Shadowlands Season 4, which will be coming with 9.2.5.
Yeah, we had briefly talked about it, I think, right?
It hadn't been announced. It hadn't been announced last podcast.
No, but we talked about them. We talked about them doing a Season 4, but we didn't. Yeah, we didn't talk about it. Yeah, we didn't have details. We just knew that something was coming.
Regardless, please continue, Liz. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's just, I felt like this happened, months ago, but it was only last week. Season 4 is going to have affixes for old raids, for the other Shadowlands raids, so you can go back and do those raids with new challenges, just like you might run a Mythic Plus dungeon. And it will also bring new dungeons into the Mythic Plus rotation, including old dungeons. They're pulling in 2 dungeons from Warlords of Draenor, and over the last week, they've had fans voting on which ones they wanted to have. And I'm here to tell you, they voted on the worst ones because Grimrail Depot.
I love Grimrail Depot.
I think that's going to be terrible.
Grimrail Depot.
Mythic Plus. I just think it's going to be miserable.
I get why you're saying that. I do. And I don't disagree with you. But the number 2 winner is the one that really makes me sad. Mythic Iron Docks.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Neither of these sound like fun, but they're going to be in the Mythic Plus rotation starting in Season 4, which will come after 9.2.5, which we don't know when that's coming.
Yeah, but it is at some point going to happen, that stuff. The thing for raiding is really interesting.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I think it's
Well,
interesting too, though. If you look at the other dungeons they're pulling in, though, it's both Tazavesh's,
which is good. I love
and
Tazavesh.
both wings of Operation Mechagon, and both wings of Return to Karazhan. So he just went and got the mythic, not the mythic dungeon, the mega dungeon from each expansion,
Yeah,
sent going back to Legion, and brought them all in.
which
So
is
that's
great.
actually, yeah, no, it's great. I have no problem with it. I just think it's interesting. I kind of hope they keep those in the rotation for every expansion. Like whenever the next expansion comes out and we all get up to max level and start doing Mythic Plus again, I want those dungeons in there because the mega dungeons are so big and so much work was put into them and there's so much to see and do around them. It kind of bites that you lose it. You know what I mean? Like I would like to see this continue.
I just want to say that I'm really excited about the affixes for raiding, and part of that is because like that lull period between like end of expansion and beginning of next expansion or next expansion event. The guild that Liz and I are in, we would traditionally do one of two things. One, we will do an achievement run to get everybody all the achievements from the current tier. That's just kind of one thing we do while we're waiting for the next stuff. But we would also do this thing where we would make our own hard modes with raids, where like we would do two bosses at the same time, where we took Aluriel and brought her to the bridge with Crossus and did both bosses with all the mechanics at the same time because we could. Or when we wanted to do Dark Shaman, but we did them on the rooftops of Orgrimmar because we could. But now we don't have to make our own hard modes anymore. we can just use affixes. This is actually kind of neat. Like, I'm really here for this.
Yeah, it definitely seems like an interesting way to extend out older raids.
And
That way, if you guys are bored doing something, like, oh God, we've been punching our faces against this guy all month, you can go back to an older raid, punch up the difficulty a bit, get comparable gear, and it's a change. It's something new it's not new because you saw it before, but it's a change from what you've been doing. So I think it's a really good idea.
And the thing you mentioned before, Matt, about how Blizzard put so much work into these mega dungeons and they're no longer relevant, that's the same with the raids. Blizzard puts tons of work into these things, into the art and the design and the fights, and they lose relevancy pretty quickly. As soon as the next raid open, is it like, oh, the gear is outdated, we've done all of this, whatever, we're moving on and never going back. And so it seems like a good idea to get people
would honestly love it.
This.
I would love it if time walking became mixed with this, where when they do time walking, they put the affixes. Like,
they were kind of already doing that, weren't they?
They've had time walking raids that have, but they would sort of done this. Like, for instance, Alduar is up to max level, but the gear is still not really worth getting.
But weren't they doing something similar to that with the Mythic Plus stuff with time walking, like bringing old dungeons up with it? With
Oh yeah.
It's just the gear is not worth it. But if the gear can be made to keep up in much the way that Mythic Plus gear keeps getting better because you can keep pushing the levels, yeah, I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think these are all good things.
But at this point, I think that cups us up. We've only got about 50 minutes left.
But we can answer at least one question.
We can try. If you've got a question for the show, guys, you can email it to us at podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast of Blizzard Watch, so we know it's for the show. Or you can use our Discord server. We've got two channels you can use. The first is for patrons. It's the Patron Q and Podcast Questions channel. We like to give you guys first crack because you keep the lights on around here. And the next one, though, if you can't be a patron for whatever reason, we still have the Q and Podcast Questions channel that's there for you to ask questions for the show as well. We usually have one of these two guys read them. So, okay, I found my dice the other week, but I don't want to do that. So we're going to do this instead. Liz.
Okay, well, the first question comes from Jacob from Denmark. And he says, as father of 2 boys with a busy job, wife, life, responsibilities, obligations, and so on and so forth, I have 1 to 2 hours of WoW time a week. Do you guys have any tips, tricks, or good advice on how to balance gaming and real life? Thanks for the great show. And I wanted to do this one, even though this is a really long conversation, because I think we've been talking about this, about Blizzard respecting our time and how sometimes less is more.
Yeah. I
Like I
definitely
feel
think,
with
yeah, I think your point earlier about how the change from Korthia to Zereth Mortis is very much indicative of it.
yeah, and I think right now, if you only have an hour or 2 a week, you can go to Zereth Mortis a couple of times, 3 times a week, and you could do everything in Zereth Mortis in like 20 minutes
Yeah,
without a lot of trouble.
and even doing
And-
enough rares and getting enough chests for the weekly doesn't take more than like 45 minutes.
And even doing rares, it doesn't give you a ton of progress on that quest. You could just go in a few times a week and do dailies and probably get it and just kill, like if you kill a rare along the way, but I don't think you're ever going to have to spend more than 20 minutes in Zereth Mortis to finish up your stuff unless you really feel like grinding.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now is a good time. If you're behind on Renown is very easy to get. If you're way behind on Renown, there is a token you can buy from a vendor right next to the Flight Master in Oribos that will bump you up to 60 Renown immediately.
Yep.
And you will get Renown from every story quest, from every calling you do.
And
all of the major stuff, you'll get Renown and you'll catch up really quickly.
you can also buy Renown now from the same vendor in Oribos that you can get the trade your weekly tokens in for. So if you get something from what I have dubbed the disappointment box, and it's nothing that you want, and you chose to get the 4 tokens now, the four little coins, you can trade those in for Renown. They just put that on the vendor. It's the first time I saw it was today.
And if you're behind on gear, Zereth Mortis drops some very good gear. Not good gear if you're like raiding and things, but good gear for getting started and being able to do stuff. And you can also buy gear in Zereth Mortis for some anima that's 226, and that's really high if you weren't raiding in the last patch.
And also Cypher gear. Don't forget about Cypher gear either. Cypher gear is the new sort of level with you gear as you do stuff. And getting that leveled up and doing the research for it is pretty quick, honestly. It's one of those things that you can set and forget. Like, you get a bunch of ciphers and you can go and set it and then come back in 3 days and it's ready to go. And you can easily get cipher gear at level 5 or 6, and that's good enough stat wise to let you start doing things like if you wanted to run mythic dungeons with the friends once a week, you could do a +10 and it's on par gear wise with what you would get. So it's pretty neat.
I feel like ciphers is a little bit of a grind because I feel like ciphers don't drop as fast.
They increase
super fast.
They increased it. They absolutely increased it over the last couple weeks. Because
that's good.
I literally did 1 45-minute run through Zereth Mortis, just grabbing some of the chests at respawn, and I have more ciphers than I know what to do with. So it's possible.
Yeah, but my advice would be to spend, 20, 30 minutes in Zereth Mortis when you have time and just do that. You'll catch up on gear and you'll be plenty good if you want to run dungeons, if you want to run low-level Mythic Plus, if you want to run raids. You can do all of that. And also LFR, if you want to see the story there. Not all of the wings are open, but no wing should take you more than a half hour. So... And certainly once you have Zereth Mortis gear, LFR rating is not going to be hard. You will outgear LFR at that point. So, I think now is a great time for people who don't have a lot of time to play WoW.
And on the other side of that question, the balancing the personal time with WoW time, especially if you only have 1 or 2 hours a week. Sometimes when we have a lot of responsibilities, we can start to feel a little bit guilty if we start to take any personal time or me time, as it were, to go and play a video game per se. But it's in those moments, and I don't want to say I'm projecting or anything like that. Maybe I am a little bit. Don't feel guilty about taking that 1 to 2 hours of WoW time a week you have, because you're there doing your family stuff and your work stuff and everything else. when you're taking care of those responsibilities and you know they're taken care of, having that hour to 2, that should be a release for you. That should be a relief. Enjoy the moment. And like Liz is saying, Zereth Mortis makes it very easy to catch up. So you can spend that 1 to 2 hours a week doing the catch up stuff, getting to where you want. And then you can spend that 1 to 2 hours a week doing other things you want. It makes it very easy to respect the time that you do have in game, even if it is only 1 or 2 hours. The game isn't like it used to be, where if you needed to do anything, you need to spend 18 hours a day in it. It's gotten a lot better in that regard, and Zereth Mortis is probably the best apotheosis of that I've seen.
Well, I think we've got time for one more question, I think, at least.
Sure.
So, Joe.
These two are very, very, they're related. One's in response to the other one, so I'm just going to group them together. This is from 6K and from Alternate Universe, Liz, I think. Or was it you?
No, that was
you.
Me. That was me.
From Liz Prime. Is an infernal just a fell elemental? A fell-elemental? And then Liz pointed out that it's made of rocks. Is it an earth elemental? I think it's an asteroid elemental. It's made from space rocks, dang it.
See, I actually like the idea of it being a fell elemental. I would like the idea of, like, eventually we could branch out the elements so that they match up to the cosmology chart if we had, like, 6 of them instead of 5. Currently, we've got the 4 we know about, plus spirit, which is also anima, which is also magic, whatever, and that's it. But if fell became an elemental, if there were elemental fell beings...
Well, it makes sense. What's fell created from?
Yeah, basically the annihilation of souls or the destruction of light and void.
And we've now learned from the Maw and the Jailer that energy can be made into other living things. Why not have there be an elemental of fell that is basically an amalgamation of that? We know elementals feed on spirit. They need spirit, right? This is a thing. I think that it is a fell elemental. I'm going to go with it. The elementals. Fell elemental it is. Headcanon accepted.
I want to sing it to the tune of Felemental. It's a Felemental all over the way. Yeah. I don't sing well, but I sing with enthusiasm, and I think that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help. But anyway,
enthusiasm counts.
I think it does.
I have a follow-up question. If an infernal is a type of elemental, does that make warlocks dark shaman?
Yes.
Kinda. Honestly, this is
basically a pact. It's not very different.
Well, this is something I've actually been thinking about a lot since Shadowlands came out. Surprising probably no one. What does a warlock do? They make pacts, and traditionally, they're also known to summon the dead and work with the dead. Why not? Why they definitely are tapping into spirit. They're definitely tapping into anima in some capacity, and that's what shaman do. Like ancestral healing was calling on not just the waters of the world and the element of water to heal, but if you go back and read the 1.0 like game manual that came with the box, they called upon the power of their ancestors channeling anima to heal wounds. Yeah, just throwing it out there. Sorry. So that's all I got.
That's fair. But yeah, I think we've answered that. And now we can move on to this incredibly long multi-question thing and try to get through that in 7 minutes. Liz, you're up. We should probably break this into 2 because it's 2 questions.
Okay. From KTS Stories. Question for the Blizzard Watch podcast, inspired by the discussion of talent trees. Oh yeah, this is gonna be a question. I got to thinking about the Torghast empowerments. I feel like for all Torghast has been maligned, the empowerments have actually made me feel like I'm making meaningful choices that impact my gameplay. I've had runs on my enhanced shaman where suddenly I'm all about summoning my earth elemental and feral spirits. Others where it's totem time all the time. And yet others where the name of the game is getting my bloodlust going. Obviously, some of the randomness would need to be taken away, but I wonder if you think that something built on similar bones might be a way to build a more dynamic talent system going forward. And yes, like Torghast is, I haven't always enjoyed Torghast, but the system where you're picking new powers is actually a lot of fun. And it does change how you play. You will cast spells that you would never cast. You will use things in different ways, like for paladins, there's one that gives divine shield when you cast it to your entire group. So that comes from being a personal defensive cooldown to being like, oh no, we're all in trouble. I'm just going to bubble everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You think about your skills in different ways. And that's what I want, is choices that are meaningful and let me rethink how I play. Let me choose how I play. So what do y'all think?
I'm going to say this.
Mm.
I don't think you should tone the randomness down. Like, no, seriously, imagine if there was stuff, like if this was just a component of raiding. If we're doing a raid or a Mythic Plus dungeon or even a normal dungeon, and suddenly after you kill them, like certain mobs, your choices pop up and they're somewhat randomized and you just pick the best one for your playstyle. Like if there's one for warriors where you can basically amp up your healing to the point where it's almost impossible to die. Almost, because I've still managed it. But you know what I mean? It really it changes the way you play the character, because you're constantly trying to do AoE, you're constantly trying to hit Bloodthirst because that gets buffed and the healing is really intense. Or there's one where shield block, no, it is shield block, not shield block though, but ignore pain. Ignore pain hits the whole party. So when I hit ignore pain to keep myself up, everybody gets it. So it becomes like you talked about before. It becomes a cooldown for the whole group. Things like that, where you couldn't plan for them, would be really interesting in terms of a talent system. You don't want that to be the whole talent system, but it would be kind of cool if you could actually have limited use talents that you're just going to get and you don't know what they're going to be. And so now, to a degree, you can't build a raid strat around them, but they're really nice to have if you get them. That could be really interesting. There's lots of reasons why it would also be really bad. So,
yeah.
And now I'm going to probably let Joe talk, because I'm positive he's got ways this could be.
I don't like randomness in raids. Sorry.
Yeah. He's a healer.
I'm not
Healers
only
do
a
not
healer.
want randomization.
I was a raid leader for 15 years. Like, no. Yeah, sorry. I think it's a fun idea, but I like the idea of it being a base thing that you can choose from that fundamentally changes the way you play. I would not be opposed to looking at Torghast and seeing what of those would make good talents, and then pulling those out in the rework of the talent system, because I agree that it does need a rework for a lot of the classes. A lot of the classes, after we were talking about it last week, they don't feel impactful. Me, it does as a resto shaman, because it does change how I play depending on what I pick at each tier. That's not the case for everybody, and that's a problem, right? So I think it would be good maybe looking at Torghast and saying, what did this do right? What did this make players feel? And then how can we take this and make it into a talent system that offers the same feeling of wildly different gameplay, but can also be counted on, right? Because that's the other side of it, right? You can, no matter what you get in Torghast, you build your run around it, but you build your run around it. You can plan for it. You can do things because you know what will happen. And that, I think, is the most important part. I'm sorry, Matt. I know you want the randomness. I know you want that chaos demon to reign supreme.
The thing is, I get you, because I mean, I've done raid leading. I was a main tank for a long time. As a main tank or as a healer, you want reliability.
Consistency.
You want to know. Yeah. I want to know I have these tools and I can use them. So, like I said, I don't think that this should be the main talent system. But I do think it would be cool if, like, in a raid, you could, like, those pop-ups happened. You would not rely on them to get through the fight, but they could suddenly make the fight easier. And that would be really interesting. But also, I think that the talent revamp could learn from Torghast in general.
Mm-hmm.
It could learn it, these are the kind of things we've introduced. What if you let people take a talent that fundamentally changes an ability in it's meaningful and it is useful in this way? So that there's stuff to learn from Torghast. I agree with that totally.
Yeah, Torghast wasn't the rogue-like experience that some of us were hoping for, but I think it has a lot of value moving forward as far as gameplay goes. And this might be a non sequitur to it, but we have a couple minutes left, and dang it, I'm going to use it for this. We talk about systems that get carried throughout and how, whether it's a good or bad thing and what it means. Torghast is probably one of those things that I kind of hope does get pulled forward in some capacity, not in its current form, but as something else or something that continues to allow players to have a fundamentally different experience with their character. Because no matter what Torghast was, that's what it was really good for. You know, get rid of my mission table and give me something Torghasty, or learn the lessons from it and bring those lessons forward. That's what I want.
Well, I think that's about all the time we've got for this week. Here's the part where I throw it over to Joe so he can do his outro.
Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you very much, Joe. Again, thank you. If you guys have questions for us, you can send them to our email address. It's podcast@blizzardwatch.com, or you can, by the way, throw the subject line podcast or Blizzard Watch so we know it's for the show, because we've got 3 shows. That's important. The other thing you can do is go to our Discord and use up the Patron Q and Podcast Questions channel or the Q and Podcast Questions channel. Both of those are available. If you're a patron, you can use the first one. If you're not a patron, you can use the second one. We like getting questions. Feel free to ask all sorts of questions. They don't even have to be about Blizzard games anymore.
No, we will answer everything. Well, maybe everything.
Yeah.
A large amount of stuff.
We will answer various things.
Yeah.
The question you're going to ask about my favorite dinosaur, I definitely will answer it.
You want to ask me questions about Magic the Gathering? I'll answer those.
Oh, someday we're going to have that discussion about those Magic the Gathering plane shift settings for D&D.
Yes.
But anyway, this has been the Blizzard Watch podcast on behalf of myself, Liz Harper, and my friend Joe here. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back next week.